is just blown. 8 years out, and I can still be surprised. Tingles with flyby. Daily ASMR videos. Hello, my tinglings. Oh, I don't even know where to begin. I literally finished reading the CES Letter 15 minutes ago. And I'll get into in a second for those of you who don't know what that is. But okay. So I've done some videos here and there about my past, that I grew up as a Mormon, a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and I stopped attending church and stopped believing in the church in 2011, and requested my records get removed, I think in 2016. I don't think that request has actually been actioned, but I haven't tried to take it any further. But anyway, so my official end would have been 2016, but I stopped attending church or anything like that in 2011. And I'm now an atheist. That's my feelings. Anyway. So, when I left the church in 2011, it's actually really, really interesting to kind of analyze myself back then. And the way I left the church was very much the way that you get entrenched in the church, which is following a feeling. You know, it was just, to me, the way I describe it was that I woke up one morning, Mormon, with my garments on, which were a big, kind of symbol. That was a symbol of a commitment I'd made as a Mormon. And, I went to bed that night having had sex outside of marriage, which is a sin, and, So, that was an interesting day. But anyway, this isn't about that. So, but the process was basically me going through and trying to, for me leaving, it was the decision that I made, the feeling that I had about the church being true, basically, was that the same thing that made me think that my ex was the person to be with, and that same thing that made me think I was going to marry him before we had actually gotten married, which was a horrendous thing. I should have never married him, but anyway, that being not what this is about. But so my process was very emotional, and there's a reason for that, which I think I'll get into later. I have so much to unpack here, and I don't know how I'm going to do that, because my mind is just going to right now. I may split this up into a couple different videos and maybe do some other things too. I've been watching a lot of Exmormon and kind of cult assessing content lately, and it's very interesting to me, so I might do a little bit more down this path, because I've been wanting to do an assessment of the church with the bite model, which is a different way of assessing a cult, and I just wanted to kind of do my own, because Telltale and Mr. Atheist, Telltale is a former Jehovah's Witness, and Mr. Atheist is an ex-Mormon, like me. So they kind of went through together, but I disagreed with some of the things, so I was, curious to go through myself. So I thought that might be an interesting thing to do for a video. I'm all over the place here, I know. So let's just get into, my decision to leave the church was very emotion-based. It was based on my own personal experience, but also just saying, like, hey, you doing the same thing here? And, yeah, you are. And so I had some interest in the actual doctrine and, kind of how that all worked and how I got kind of taken in or that sort of thing. But it also wasn't super relevant to me because it wasn't the reason I left. I didn't leave because there were horses in the Book of Mormon, although I'd always thought that was weird. Or, but it was like those sort of things I could always come up with something. And my own ignorance was enough to let it be a gray area for me. So, I didn't actually do a lot of searching about Mormonism specifically and what had happened there. Although, my basic opinion on Mormonism was that Joseph Smith is a con man who basically got something going, and then, people have carried that through. But and I kind of thought, well, I think even the leaders of the church today are kind of taken in by that original con from Joseph Smith. That's kind of been my viewpoint and my perspective over the past 8 years or so. And I have a bit of a different perspective now. And as I said, I just finished this just before I started recording here, so I'm sure my mind is going to go through lots of different iterations. I'm sure I'm going to end up researching more stuff to do with this, but I thought it would be interesting for me to just share with you my rough, unfiltered, what's going on in my brain. I don't even know where to start with this. So the CES letter, why don't we just start with what it actually is. So the CES letter is a letter written by someone who was a formerly, faithful adherent to the Mormon faith, who went on a mission for 2 years, was preaching the gospel, and then basically came across a quote of somebody talking about people leaving the church in droves being a new apostasy because of more information about the historical record. So he looked into that, and he said, basically, I've come together with all this information. So it sounds like his grandfather got in contact with the head of the church education system, which is what CES stands for, Mormon Church. And the CES leader said, yeah, you can have your grandson send me a letter. I'd be happy, to read it. Anyway, he's never replied to it. Of course, it's a man. It is the church. Very patriarchal. Anyway. Benevolent feminism, which is also destructive. Won't go into that. I can't go into everything that is going to come into my brain right now. But we could probably do a video on each of those things. So basically this is all of his issues with the church as it stands because of the doctrines. So one of the first ones, it's one that I wasn't that aware of on kind of an image level. I kind of figured there was something that happened like this, but I didn't know that it's actually recorded what actually did happen, and that this is the only thing that did happen. And it's funny because I'd actually heard about this before, but it's interesting to actually feel in my brain how that information hits me differently when I'm not trying to believe in the church. It's really interesting because I can actually feel that difference in my head, like comparing it to my past and my present. So the thing that I have in my head right now is there's a picture of Joseph Smith, who's the first prophet of the church, and he has his head in a hat. So through all my growing up and throughout the church, throughout the world, there's pictures that you'll see of Joseph Smith sitting at a table, gold plates on there, and then there's a curtain between him and Oliver Cowdery, who's writing down the translation, longhand in a quill or whatever they use then. But Joseph Smith is looking at the plates. So apparently it's been confirmed by an essay from the church that's on LDS.org that is not the way that it happened, that he would look into a seer stone. So this is actually like official information from the church that they've confirmed now. This is what I mean. They're actually confirming this now because basically the cat's out of the bag so much that they have to confirm it. I know that's why, but anyway, that Joseph Smith goes through this whole rigmarole from the Angel of Moroni going year after year after year, supposedly, to get these plates. But then he has these plates, but to translate, he's not even looking at these plates. He's looking at a stone in a hat. And there was a painting on there of it, of Joseph Smith putting his face into a hat. And I thought, there's a reason that's not what they've been showing. And it's because that looks so dodgy. It just looks so dodgy. Like I look at it and just, that looks so ridiculous. It was astounding. Anyway, I'm not going to go through everything. As I said, I may make a series of videos to do with this, but this is the image that I just have playing again and again in my mind, is that it's not some amorphous, oh, you know, something probably happened. It's this, you know, guy with his head in a hat looking at a stone that he also used to go and look for treasures. And that's how he wrote, well, translated, the Book of Mormon. Absolutely ludicrous. I have no words. I have no words. I don't even know what to say about that. Because I just think about everything. Anyway, so that was the one, that's the thing that keeps coming back to me. But then the other thing was these quotes. He really breaks it down in a very logical way about how it doesn't really make sense that you'd have a prophet, seer, and revelator who is in touch with God and how everything is in the present day, but then have all these things that have changed through time. And then there were two things that made me, probably the biggest one is the church's stance on tithing, which is interesting because it was the stance on tithing that my love saw, that he was then talking. He watched that, he really thought that was weird. It was the church's stance on tithing, which is basically you pay 10% of everything that you get, you pay back to the church. Because you're giving it back to God. And he's like, well, why would God need money? But anyway. So, with the tithing, there's a quote from Lorenzo Snow, who's a former prophet, and he's talking about the concept of tithing, and a part that's been removed, just covered over with the 3 little dots and ellipse in there, is who has the means. So Lorenzo Snow is asking, okay, give us 1/10 of, if you're able to. So if you can't put food on the table, if you can't pay your rent, then probably you don't have the means, so it wouldn't be expected of you. But there's, I was told again and again and again as a child to basically pay the Lord first, and He'll take care of you. So if you have all these bills to pay your tithing, and then everything will work out. Which is basically, there's a bishop's storehouse, so the church can go and use the money you just gave them to give you food. So it's so bizarre. But I never knew that original wording actually existed. That word from the prophet, which is, sacrosanct in the Mormon church, said, who has means? I'd never known that. So that was fascinating. And then the other thing he talks about was something I'd heard about before, which is that the church spent $1.5 billion on a mega mall when malls were kind of, malls are much less big than they were in the 90s. A lot more online shopping, I guess, that sort of thing. But so they invested $1.5 billion in a mega mall. And over that, I think it was from the 80s, anyway, I'm not going to quote the numbers, but he was comparing it to a period of time where all of the humanitarian aid that had been given equaled $1.4 billion. That was really stark, just seeing that comparison and thinking, yeah, really, if the Church of Christ, so if Jesus Christ, if this is supposed to be his church, is that really how he would allocate his funds? And, you guys know I don't believe in Jesus Christ. Some of the atheists don't believe in anything. But, based on the New Testament understanding of who Jesus is as a person, would probably be a bit more giving than that. Just saying. So, that was pretty astounding. So I could go on about more things, but I think it's usually better if I don't go on too long, because I think this type of video can get too long and then it loses interest. So I'm going to break this up and we'll do 2 videos. But I'll probably cover a little bit different things because I've had some other things on my mind. So part 2 will be still fresh from my reading of the CES Letter. So, thank you so much for joining me, and I look forward to seeing you for